Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today, and thank you for this invitation. And it is so wonderful to see all of you gathered here together, especially all of the young women in the house. Okay, give yourself an applause. And thank you, Alliance for Girls, for having this organization, and thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored. I know I was listening to the conversations earlier, and I just want to tell you a little bit. In the documentary that you just saw, a lot of it focuses on my work with the United Farm Workers, and we did some really important things during the union, bringing basic human rights to farm workers, like toilets in the fields that farm workers didn't have, cold drinking water, rest periods, the right to organize, unemployment insurance, things of that nature. And it only happened because we were able to get millions of people to support the Farm Workers Union through boycotts to make that happen. And kind of using a lot of the way of organizing that I learned in United Farm Workers. And actually, I want to throw out the name of a man. His name is Fred Ross Sr. If anybody in the audience ever heard of him, hold your hand up. One person, two people, three people. Well, he was such a great organizer that people don't know him, okay? And that's what organizers do. As organizers, we try to organize people and empower them. And this is what we do with the Dolores Huerta Foundation. I left the United Farm Workers in 2002 and went back to grassroots organizing, which is the way I first learned about organizing in my hometown of Stockton, California. People from Stockton in the house, yes. And so that's what we're doing now with my foundation. We work throughout the whole Central Valley of California. And those of you that come from the Central Valley know that this is one of the most poverty-stricken areas in our state. Those of you that live in the Bay Area here, you're very, very blessed, because I can tell you that the Central Valley of California is like Alabama, okay? I come from Kern County, which is one of the most, somebody here from Kern? Good? And this is one of the most racist areas, homophobic areas of the state of California. And we're trying to change that. We're trying to, as Reverend Jim Lawson says, who worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he said, we need to tear down the systems of oppression. Tear down those systems of oppression, and this is what we're trying to do. And I heard some references to some of the incarcerations that we have of our youth. And with our foundation, we are trying to stop the school-to-prison pipeline. We're trying to stop that. And I know many of you are working on those same issues. And the way that one of the things that we did is that we sued our high school district because they had expelled 2,600 students in a year and a half. Needless to say, African American students and Latino students, hundreds of times higher than the Anglo students, hundreds of times higher. I'm talking about like 600 times higher. So, but we won the lawsuit, and from 2,600 expulsions, last year there were 26. Now, we started organizing in another area of California, a place called California City. It's up in the high desert. And there, the statistics were also horrible. African American students being expelled and suspended, 81%, 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. And when they would do something wrong, they don't call the parents, they call the police department and take the child down, and they book the child, and right away they get a record, okay? And so, this is some of the stuff that we're working on, and I'll talk to you about a couple of other things that we're working on. And then trying to get our people to run for office. And we have been able to get them to run for school boards, city councils, recreation boards, and this is what we have to do to take the power. And some of the people that we organize, they're immigrants. They speak very broken English, but they insist that everything be translated into Spanish. And I like to highlight one of our folks that we organize. Her name is Leticia Prado. And she and her husband did a petition because they wanted to get a fence around the schoolyard. And then what they did is actually went further than that. They passed a bond issue and got a brand new gymnasium at their middle school, a brand new gymnasium. And then she said, well, if I did that, maybe I should run for school board. And she did, and she won. And when the principal of that school wanted to get rid of the breakfast program for the farm worker children because it was too much paperwork, oh, she got rid of the principal and kept the program. Okay. And then she looked at another district that was kind of in trouble, a water board district, and she got herself elected to that because the manager that they had just hired had been fired from another district for embezzlement. And so she got rid of him and then started looking into the bank records, found out there was $250,000 missing. And so she called in the grand jury. Well, this is, I think, a good example of women power, okay? Feminist power, when women are able to take power. And I think this is what our goal has got to be. You know, Coretta Scott King said, we will never have power, we will never have peace in the world until women take power. Think about that. We will never have peace in the world until women take power. So that has got to be our ultimate goal, all of us here. And I have to say that I have amended that because we know that not all women are feminists. And I say that because there are some women that are still not, they really haven't, the lights haven't turned on yet, and so sometimes we have to go out there and we have to convert them. And I like to define what a feminist is. Well, a feminist is someone who stands up for women's reproductive rights, somebody who cares about immigrants' rights, who cares about LGBT rights, who cares about global warming, and somebody who actually stands up for working people. So that is what a feminist is. And so we know that there are men that can also be feminists, right? So let's applaud the men in the room that are feminists. And so when we think of all of the critical problems that we have in our world right now, and when we look at our television screens, and then we see that they're having these big meetings, all over the world, and these people are making these really important decisions about our world, our economy, and we look at those pictures, and we say, what's wrong with the picture? What's wrong with the picture? There are no feminists in the room. It's all men, right? And we know that if we're not at that table, that they're going to make the wrong decisions. And they do, and they do. So this is why we have to think about how we as women can take power. Well, in some ways, we have to kind of start with basics. Because we know, unlike many of you here in this room, there are many women that don't know that they can, take power. And unfortunately, it's because of the way that we have been socialized in our society. In our society, we have been socialized as women to be victims. Starting with all of those little fairy tales about Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, and, when they tell us that Prince Charming is on his way and he's going to give you a big kiss and he's going to wake you up and you're going to live happily ever after. Well, number one, we know he doesn't exist, okay? In the first place, okay? And if a pretender Prince Charming comes along, gives you a big kiss, puts you to sleep, and then baby's daddy is gone. Where did he go, okay? And the women are left by themselves. So, we've got to change the way that we socialize our young women. And when we look at the animal kingdom, who were the strongest, the male or the female? The female, right? The lions, because they have to take care of their cubs, take care of their babies. And so we've got to just change that narrative around, just change it the way it should be to know that women can be strong. And say to women, it's okay, little girls, it's okay to get your white dress dirty, It's okay for you to climb that tree. It's okay for you to wrestle with your brother. And all of these things that we need to do to let young women know, young children know as women, that they can be strong also. That, they don't have to, and from the very beginning, this whole meant that we need somebody to support us, that we need somebody to protect us. We've got to learn, and girls have to learn, you've got to support yourself. Think about that. You got to stay in school because you can never depend on somebody to support you. And then we've got to learn how to protect ourselves also, and especially how to protect ourselves from domination. Not let anybody dominate us. How to protect ourselves, and I'm going to say this word too, seduction. Seduction, so that, our path that we want is going to be one that we can take, that we can have the courage to take, and not to let anybody get in our way. And if we can do that, then we are going to have better lives. But while I'm saying all of this, I know it's not easy. It's not something that's easy it's easy to say, but not very easy to do. And I think that's what you are doing in the Girls Alliance is very, very important. The other thing is I was sitting here listening to the comments, and we were talking a lot about racism. Well, this is something that we need to really, really attack. And, when we think about racism and we combine it with that other word, fascism, and I think a lot of young people don't even know what that means, fascism. Well, we know that in Nazi Germany, fascism led to the Holocaust, of the mass slaying of the Jewish people. And so we think, well, that couldn't happen in the United States of America. But recently, we know that racism has led to mass slayings. And we've seen it happen in Gilroy, California, not too far from here. We've seen it happening in El Paso, Texas, when somebody went out there to kill people because they were Mexicans. We've seen it happen when people have killed somebody else because they happen to be African Americans because they were black, or in New Jersey because they were Jewish. And we know that all of us know that women are killed every year because they just happen to be women, So we have got to change that. And I really do believe that one of the ways that we can erase the ignorance, because this is where it comes from. Children are not born racist or misogynist. This comes from what they hear from their parents or their culture, whatever. So I think we've got to make this a priority that we have to take this on. We've got to make sure that we can change and erase the racism, the misogyny, the homophobia, the bigotry in our society. And I do believe that one of the ways we can do that, as I said before, is our educational system. So I think we have to start teaching our children in kindergarten, boys and girls in kindergarten, to stop some of these ignorant cultures that we have. And one of the ways I like to talk about racism, and I think it's a very simple way, and it's actually science, okay? It's actually science. I like to remind everybody that we only have one human race, Homo sapiens, right? One human race. And remind everybody where our human race came from. Our human race came from where? Africa. Our human race came from Africa. We have a lot of different cultures. We have a lot of different nationalities, a lot of different ethnic groups, but we only have one human race. And as we said, our human race came from Africa. And, our human race traveled across the planet, went to Asia, came down to the Bering Strait to the Americas, and people got lighter in skin. And one of our tribes, human tribes, went way up north to Europe where it's very cold. People lost their color. Now you have to go to the beach or the tanning salon to get your color back. Okay? But, when we think about this, that we are one human race, then we can say to all of the white nationalists, the neo-Nazis, the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, get over it, you're Africans already, okay? Just stop it already. And, we just really have to promote that and promote that to everybody. So, I would like all of you, when you go home tonight or, during Thanksgiving dinner, just announce to all of your relatives right there sitting at the dinner table, hey, you all, we're all Africans. Yeah, just do it, see what the reactions are. And then you may have to explain to them so that they'll understand how that actually happens, okay? How that actually happens, that we're all African. But we have to start doing this. And then also we have to teach, again, in our educational system, what the contributions have been of people of color. okay? What the contributions have been. Starting with the White House and the Congress were built by who? African slaves. Who were the first slaves on the Americas? The indigenous people, okay? The indigenous people are Native Americans, African Americans, immigrants that came from Mexico, from the Philippines, from China, from India, from Japan. They built the country. They built the infrastructure of the United States of America. And if we can teach that in our school systems, our children of color can be proud of who they are. They never have to feel belittled or demeaned because they're persons of color. And our white children, our Anglo children, they can get rid of that poison of white supremacy and white privilege. We've got to do this, okay? We've got to do this. Because when we think, of what's wrong with our country right now, this is a large part of it. And you know, I was born in the state of New Mexico. My great-grandfather was in the Union Army during the Civil War. He was born in Rochester, New York, okay? I tried to give food to a homeless woman the other day, and she yelled at me, "Get away from me, you wetback." You know? And you know, as a person of color, and I know I'm saying this to everybody in the room here, there's a color, we get these microaggressions all of the time, all of the time. I was just talking to my comadre, who had been in one of the Midwestern states, and she said it felt so weird when people don't look at you. And I remember that feeling going to Texas once, that you're walking through the airport, and it's like you're part of the furniture, but people don't acknowledge you, you know? And it makes you feel really, really weird. So somehow all of us have got to start addressing the issue of racism and of sexism also, you know? We've got to do this. And I think that we've got to put it into our curriculums in our schools, but I also think that all private institutions, you know, all public institutions, all organizations have got to say, okay, let's start doing something about this. I was recently in Austin, Texas, in Austin at the LBJ Library, and they had a three-day program just on racism. A 3-day program just on racism. And I think this is what we have to do everywhere. But then let's also do that about sexism, right? About the way that women are mistreated, the way that we're objectified, the way that women are discriminated. And I want to say something to the women in the room. You know, whenever you aspire to a job or a position that you want, and you think, I really don't have all that education, I really don't have the experience, just do it like the guys do, pretend that you do, okay? Learn on the job, learn on the job. So in order to get that power that we're talking about, we all have to step up. We all got to, we've got to tap into our inner courage. And now I went through that path like many of you have too, and some of you are still going, on that path to find your voice and to find your courage. And sometimes, like I said, if you feel kind of like those anxieties and nervousness, ignore it as much as you can and do what you have to do to promote yourself. And never be afraid to take credit for your work. Pretend you're Oprah Winfrey, okay? Channel your inner Oprah and take credit for what you do. Don't let other people take credit for your work. And the other thing is we've got to get engaged. We've got to go out there. I'm going to ask this question, and I want you to be honest and raise your hands. How many of you know who your congressperson is in this area? Okay, a lot of us don't know. Okay, how many of you know who your U.S. Senator is? More people? Okay, how many of you know who your school board representatives are? A few people. Okay, good. Well, this is what we have to do. We have to learn who our school board persons are. We want to get rid of racism and misogyny, homophobia in our areas. Okay, find out who they are. And the other thing is, too, we've got to get out there and work in elections to get good people elected. Let me ask you another question. How many of you have gone canvassing door to door, knocking on doors? A good number, but we need to have more of that. So we have elections coming up, and I want to ask all of you to please go out there. One more thing, the census. The census. please, all of you, help on the census. Our Latino communities are terrified. They're not scared. They're terrified because they're afraid to get counted in the census, especially people who are undocumented, people who are immigrants. Our president, Trump, tried to put a question on the census that people would have to say whether they were citizens or not. Well, guess what? We sued Trump and we won. There will be no citizenship question. So I know that you're here to celebrate women, to celebrate the things, the power that we're going to have in the future, but we know we have a lot of work to do, and I think that this conference here is really a preparation and a beginning, because we're going to go forward. And maybe not in my lifetime, but I know that in the lifetime of my children, we will see the day where we will have a woman president, we will have... And right now, because of all of the marches of women, we have seen that we have so many more numbers of women that have been elected to the Congress, and all over the United States of America, women are stepping up, and we're going to continue to make that happen. So, just one thing too, we mustn't forget about climate change. Okay, I don't know if you all know this, but Jane Fonda, my dear friend Jane Fonda, is going to devote her entire future life to work on climate change. So this is something that we really have to participate in and think about. So my time is up, but before I leave the stage, I'm just going to ask you all a question. And it's a really, really simple one. And the question is, who's got the power? And I'm going to ask you the question, and I want you to say, we've got the power. And when I say, what kind of power? We're going to say, feminist power. Can we do that? Okay, but please shout it out so loud so all of the homophobes, misogynists, sexual harassers, the bigots, the climate deniers, so they can hear us, all right? Okay, so let's go. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? Feminist power. So are we gonna go out there and organize? What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede? Okay, let's all do it together with an organized hand clap. Let's go. Sí, se puede. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.